So, live from Bucerius Studios in Hamburg.
And from my house in Chicago, Illinois.
And my desk at the Singapore Management University.
Welcome to the Legal Tech Essentials 2022. I gotta say, feels good to be back. I hope you are as excited as we are, and we will dive right in with a short presentation of the institutions that are bringing this to you. So let me quickly share my screen, and then we get started. All right. So this is the introduction session. It's going to be a short one, and it will keep you informed on all things important about Legal Tech Essentials 2022. Let me start with one of the host institutions, that's Bucerius Law School in Hamburg, Germany. You will have seen that we are not the only institution this year that is presenting this. We have been joined by our great friends from Singapore, but more on that later. First of all, I want to let you know that we are Germany's first private law school. We've just turned 20 years old. You can see here from the celebration that happened during the pandemic, as you can see by all people, it all being outside and people actually having space between them. I like the pandemic, not for the fact that parties looked like that, but for the fact that it led us to invent and come up with Legal Tech Essentials, which we did in place of our normal summer program that happens in person on our campus. Now, the summer program has happened finally again this year, but we've decided to keep Legal Tech Essentials because it's such a great program to connect with a community from all over the world. Here at Bucerius, our core value is Mut. That's bravery in German. So here's your daily free German lesson. And I believe that bravery is really key for this and current program for two reasons. One, doing these innovative things, these new things, legal data science, legal technology, operations, design, innovation in general requires a strong heart and a desire to try out new things, even though you're unsure about the outcomes. That's why bravery is so key. And second, at least here in my institution, it took a strong belief of our leadership and the school into these topics to allow us to form the Center for Legal Technology and Data Science that is bringing you this particular program. So that's why bravery, Mut is so important for us. Bucerius Law School, in case you're wondering, or in case you're thinking about applying, is doing rather well in the rankings. We're generally ranked #1 in the country. But more important for our purposes is bucerius.us/tech center. That's the Center for Legal Technology and Data Science that I mentioned. And we are overseeing this program, created the individual bits, and found our friends in Singapore to make this a joint effort. The center does all sorts of things. But what's important is that, of course, it's not the center that created the program. It's rather people. So here you see what the center currently means in terms of human resources. There's Daniel Martin-Katz, our academic director, myself, Dirk Hartung, the executive director, and then Lauert Skerler, or Larry, as many of you might know him, as our assistant director. We all have individual roles, and you will hear from each single one of us over the course of this presentation and the next 4 weeks. But I thought it's good to start with the people and make sure that it's them who really put this together. Okay. When I present research, as I will do next week, and as we will from time to time see in individual sessions, it's important to remember that there is a research group for legal data science here at Bucerius. And I quickly want to mention Janis, Michael, Corinna, and Maxi, because a lot of the work that we might end up talking about and that shapes our thinking at the center here at Bucerius is actually their work. It's important to make sure that you've seen all the faces. Now, since we are a research institution, give me 30 seconds to talk about what research our center does and how that ties into the program of Legal Tech Essentials. One, we're interested in the legal profession, especially in how digitization shapes it and the rules that we need to create around legal technology. So how does technology affect lawyers, judges, other providers of law? That is one topic that we're very interested here. Then core and center is legal data science. Here we look at the legal system and try to understand it, measure it, monitor it with tools from computer and data science, from really mathematics and physics, and try to figure out how we can better understand this complex adaptive system that is our legal system. And then the third leg for our research activity really is the market for legal services. How does the digitalization of legal work change market forces? How does it affect law firms, but also how does it affect courts and the justice system? So you'll really see that what we are interested about makes up 1/2 of the curriculum, while our friends in Singapore bring some other really interesting topics about which you will hear more in a second. And I wouldn't be a good researcher if I wouldn't plug some work examples. When I talk about measuring the legal system as a complex adaptive system, here is 2 of the more influential papers that we've written. They're fairly long, though they're only half as long when you don't read the annex. Still about 30 pages each. You might want to check them out if you're into these things. Otherwise, just click the links because that helps them spread around the world. And that really is what this is all about, the great global community that we got for this program. I want to hand it over to my friend Gerald here to present our partners in Singapore, which this big picture is only a first tease, and I'm really excited to hear from you. So Gerald, over to you.
Thank you. And while I share my screen, let me just say we are so excited. I'm so excited to all of the sessions that are going to premiere in next week and after that. So on to the Yong School of Law. So the Yong School of Law is Singapore's second oldest law school, and this makes us sound quite old, but it's also true that we are the second youngest law school in Singapore. So you can kind of infer how many law schools there are. We are in fact only 15 years old, and the word management in the name tends to confuse people, but actually we are a full-fledged law school with around 50 full-time faculty members and students across the undergrad, JD, Masters, PhD, LLM levels. We're located right next to Singapore's Central Business and Civics Districts, the Supreme Court in particular, and focus in particular on commercial law, dispute resolution, and no prizes for guessing now, law and technology. In particular, the Center for Computational Law that we established in 2020, which is a great year for establishing centers, if I would say, focuses on the intersection of computer science and law. And we are centrally interested in producing theoretical research and practical tools that help lawyers better take advantage of the significant wisdom that one can find from across the computational sciences. Our team comprises the director, Hao Kang, industry director, Alexis Chun, Ming, and myself. Ming is the principal investigator of one of our flagship research projects in computational law, which I will highlight in more detail later on when we go through the session overview. That project revolves around the vision of building a formal language for expressing legal rules and contracts, as if legalese were not already formal enough. Well, in helping us build towards this grand vision, we are supported by a wonderful team of people, a wonderful team of research engineers and affiliates with backgrounds across programming language theory, formal verification, mathematics, and so on, as well as our center administration staff. Now, also a quick shout out to our industry partners, in particular Clifford Chance, who has kindly sponsored out a little bit for helping us bring the essentials to you this time around. Now, we are also interested, in addition to computational law, in applying machine learning technologies to law, as we will have the opportunity to share in the legal science session in later on. And for those who can't wait for that, again, as a good researcher, I have to plug my center's work. Here's some of a taster of the work that we have done, as well as the events we have run. On these fronts, we are really, really honored to have been working with the center at Bucerius very, shall I say, seriously. And that includes on co-hosting this year's Legal Tech Essentials. We're hosting this at a slightly awkward time, I know, evening in Singapore and very early in the morning in some quarters of the Pacific, to cater to the international audience that we hope the Essentials will reach this year. And I personally can't wait to hear all of the exciting speakers we have lined up for you over the next few weeks. And we'll now hand you over back to Larry to explain the logistics of how this will unfold.
Perfect. Now, here we are. All right, my name is Laurits Gerlach, as Dirk has mentioned, and I work with Dirk and Dan at the Center for Legal Technology and Data Science here at Bucerius Law School. And so before we begin, I would like to quickly give a shout out to all the organizations that have enabled this program, not just the 2 organizations that you've heard from so far, but also our generous sponsors at WIPOC and Clifford Chance. You'll hear from them in the next session, and also our associated partners, Chicago Kent College of Law, the Codex, the European Legal Tech Association, and the Hamburg chapter of Legal Hackers. Now, next, I would like to make some short administrative announcements. about this year's program. First off, emails. Our primary way of communicating with you will be through email. So please make sure to check your spam folder every now and then so you don't miss anything. And in the unlikely event that our emails land in your spam folder, consider putting this email address on the screen, essentials@lawschool.de, on your email client's allow list so that they are never classified as spam. During the program, you can expect two kinds of emails from us. There will be a weekly roundup of what to expect for the coming week with Zoom links and additional info, and we'll send that out every Monday. In these emails, you will also find a link to the Dropbox folder that contains all slides and additional materials from each lecture. So if you're the kind of person that likes to look at slides after the talk, we've got you covered. Also, there will be reminders on the day of each webinar, and they will go out around 1 hour before it starts, just like today. The second thing is going to be about recordings, because I know that for many of you, especially those in the Americas and on the West Coast, this is very important, and so I'd like to take a minute to introduce what we're doing this year. There will be recordings for nearly all lectures. We need some time to edit them, however, so they will go online with a delay of 1 week after each webinar. The recordings will be available to all participants, and they will be available for the duration of this year's program. With the exception of this session, which we will edit and put online tomorrow. Third, there are many advantages to teaching over the internet, but there are also some drawbacks. And most importantly, it's not as easy to meet your fellow learners and to engage in a discussion. And that's why we hope to continue these conversations on social media between lectures and after lectures. And so there is a LinkedIn group, which you can find here. It's the best place to connect with your fellow participants and with some of our lecturers. And some of you have already joined. We already have about 3,600 members in that group. Also, the conversation continues as it does every year on Twitter between lecturers under the hashtag Legal Tech Essentials. I would also want to make a quick note about the attendance record. Some of you may be wondering what became of that. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacities for it this year, and so we will not be offering an attendance record or a certificate again this year. That's it for the logistics for this year. If you have any questions about the program that I have not answered yet, please drop them in Q&A during this presentation, and I'll be here the entire time and answer your questions. This is also a great opportunity to practice how questions work in Zoom. If you have a question today or in the coming webinars, use the Q&A feature down below to ask and not the chat, because the chat might get crowded and your question might get lost. If you use the Q&A feature, we can organize questions and make sure we get to most, if not all of them. And with that, let me hand it over to Daniel Martin Katz.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. And it's my great pleasure to be here once again for Legal Tech Essentials. One of the things, just to kind of start to talk about the chat function briefly. If you go ahead and take a look down in the corner there, make sure that if you want to send a message to the whole group that you've selected the everyone versus the host and panelists. I've seen some of the folks were saying hello and where they were from, and they were sending it just to the hosts and panelists. But I think it's nice to see kind of all the folks that are joining us from all the different time zones. It's very early for some. It's late in the evening. Well, for others, in the middle of the day in Europe and in Africa. Okay. So what we want to do is something a little different than what we've done in prior intro sessions. For those of us who've been here with us before, we want to offer a bit of a kind of a flyover of the different sessions that we're going to do. We're going to have 12 sessions total after this one, so 12 substantive sessions over the next 4 weeks on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and we're covering a variety of different topics, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But for those of you who kind of want to, maybe this is your first time, or you're just kind of maybe getting interested in these ideas from the beginning, we want to give you a link to a kind of 101 session that we did last year, and this is available on YouTube. Larry will bring it up right now. So if you want to go here, and we'll put the same link in the chat in just a moment. This is an overview we did last year, and I think we were kind of looking through it and say, well, there's no reason for us to kind of do it for a sec again with slightly updated version. We'll just send folks here, and you can kind of watch this at your convenience on YouTube, and it'll give you kind of the primer or the 101 of some of what you're some of what you'll see here. There's a lot of other great content on the web that you can find, blog posts, articles, and so forth that will kind of, if there's terminology or ideas that are new or unfamiliar to you, you can kind of supplement yourself from there using the resources on the web. Now, we call this, by the way, the essentials. Just to highlight for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we call this the essentials because the idea of this was, hey, this is kind of the appetizer course, or an appetizer kind of amount of some topics which you could have a whole semester-long course on, for example, digital justice, or artificial intelligence or something like this. And so we have no intention that this is going to be the full and complete treatment, but this is the opportunity to give you a little bit of a taste of some of these types of topics here. And these are some of the topics that you'll see over the course of the next 4 weeks. So if you ultimately wanted to go and do more, we have, for example, at Bucerius, a summer program in legal technology and operations, which is 3 weeks, fairly intense 3 weeks, which will be available once again this coming summer. For those of you, we've had folks who started on the essentials and then say, you know what, I do want to do more, and then join us in Hamburg in the summer. So we'll be providing more information about that in the days and weeks to come. But that's just, if you want to go for more, that opportunity is very much available. So these are some of the topics that we'll cover. Of course, we can't cover every single topic in the entire universe of, say, legal innovation or legal technology innovation, but these are some big themes that you'll see: legal design, digital justice, kind of an overall overview of the market. And that particularly is, by the way, present in that 101 session that we mentioned, that I mentioned just a moment ago. We'll be looking at some specific areas, like, some of the stuff that's going on the scientific side, some of the things that are going on in kind of legal operations inside of companies in terms of trying to more rationally manage the legal function. So yeah, again, and some of the things going on in law firms and in the regulatory environment. So overall, we hope that this is a fairly representative sample of what's out there, but of course, again, it's challenging to cover every single topic in the detail that one might want. So just sort of set expectations going in. So again, today we want to do a flyover of these sessions as our kind of kickoff, and again, we'll be back on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for the next 4 weeks. But we're definitely spanning the globe. It's I'm having an iced coffee right here and it's early in the morning here in Chicagoland, and it's middle of the day in Hamburg, and it's in the evening in Singapore. So we're very delighted to be here again with you. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Larry. Larry's going to talk about the first session. So we're just going to go sequentially through kind of a little bit, a taster on each of the sessions that's coming, and kind of give some color or some thoughts on what you might expect to see. And with that, over to Larry in Hamburg.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. Legal Tech Essentials is a format that is open and free for everyone, and we want to cover all areas of the legal system, but we also want to make this content useful for the greatest number of people that we can. And while we have spent a lot of time on the corporate legal market, we also have a special focus and a special place in our hearts for access to justice and govtech. So in essence, making the public justice system, the courts, and our lawmaking better. And in the past, we've had sessions on this by thought leaders such as Shannon Salter, the current Deputy Attorney General for British Columbia, and the former chair of the Civil Resolution Tribunal, which is the most modern court in the world. We've heard from Valérie Santo, who talked about the work she's doing at the European Central Bank on legislative data visualization. And of course, we've heard from Richard Susskind, who wrote the seminal book, Online Courts and the Future of Justice, and who will be a guest again this year, and Dan will talk more about this later. This year, we will begin with our first session where you will hear from Dirk, who was here earlier on November 15th, so Tuesday next week, and he will present the findings of a study by Bucerius Law School, the Boston Consulting Group, and the German Legal Tech Association that came out earlier this year. In this program, we have participants from over 100 countries, so there will be a lot of different viewpoints in the audience. And even though court systems all over the world are different, they face similar challenges in making the transition to a digital future. The study that Dirk will present compares approaches in countries and will give a high-level overview of how we can modernize our court systems through process and technology. And this is one of the examples why we love doing Legal Tech Essentials, because it brings together such a diverse set of participants from all over the world so that we can all learn from each other's viewpoints and experiences. Of course, there's also debate as to whether and how much the justice system should be changed and reformed at all. There are also many proponents of the status quo or for only very light reform. And this is an area where we cannot afford to get it wrong. Every change to a justice system is a change at scale. Every change to procedural laws is a change at scale, one where the potential risks and ramifications are not immediately visible. In any case, we expect a lively debate, and I invite you to come to the session and talk in the chat and Q&A, share your viewpoint, and think about how this applies to your home jurisdiction. And here's a second area we have historically laid a focus upon, which is legal operations. Many legal departments, especially large legal departments and some law firms, have established legal ops teams to deal with the more for less challenge and to address the rising legal complexity they have to deal with. If you don't know what the term legal operations mean, and if you like a general introduction to it, there is another study by Bucerius Law School and the Boston Consulting Group that I've linked to here. And all of these materials can also be found in the Dropbox folder that we have shared in today's email. The legal ops space has grown very rapidly over the past couple of years, and the standard anecdote to tell at this point is about the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, CLOC, which was founded in 2012 as a book club in San Francisco. This book club grew into an association of in-house counsel who think about legal operations, and at some point, their annual conference became so big that it had to be moved. It had to be moved from San Francisco, where it originated, to Las Vegas, because there was not a venue in the Bay Area that was large enough to accommodate the vast number of participants. But legal operations is a lot more difficult to sum up succinctly than legal technology. So what we thought we'd do for the second session on November 16th, so Wednesday next week, is put together 3 people on a panel who have done legal operations in very different roles. For one, we have David Cambria, sometimes termed the godfather of legal operations, who first started a legal ops function at Archer Daniels Midland. Then he moved to the international law firm Baker McKinsey, and who is now managing director of legal business solutions at PwC. So he has seen the in-house perspective. He has implemented this at a multinational law firm, and he now has the perspective of a Big Four player. We also have an European perspective from an in-house department provided by Gloria Sanchez-Soriano of Banco Santander. And we will also hear from Liz Lugonis, who is COO at Uplevel Ops, a consultancy that specializes on legal operations and who has seen the challenges that her clients face when they create an operations function. So if you are in a corporate legal function, I expect this session to be of great interest to you. And of course, at the same time, if you're a lawyer advising corporate clients, this will help you understand how legal departments do it, and you may get some ideas on how to implement legal ops in your own practice. A third important area that we like to focus on in our sessions is legal design. And design here, to borrow a Steve Jobs quote, is not just how it looks and feels, but really how it works. Because when we talk about design in the legal space, we mean service design. How do we improve the delivery of legal services? How can we make processes easier? And this is an area where you can apply the framework of design thinking to law, where you can make the law better through ideation. So for example, brainstorming, and human-centered design to improve the user experience for the people that the law serves. For example, if you look at most forms that you have to fill out on a daily basis, most websites that you use, if you stare at them long enough, and if you apply the methods that we will talk about in this session, you will find ways to drastically improve them. And by that, I mean make them less painful for the people who fill them out and less painful for the people who collect the form. Our speaker on November 17th, Josh Kubicki, is the co-founder of Bold Duck Studios, a consulting firm that specializes in legal design and bringing lean to legal. And lastly, a big part of the appeal of legal technology and legal operations is that it enables entrepreneurship. It enables business models that scale, and it enables innovation that scales. We have done founder stories in the past years, one, for example, by Alma Assay, one by Haley Altman, and one by Jason Boehmig, who all founded legal technology startups. In these stories, we talk about the market for legal technology startups and venture capital activity in this space. But we also talk about how founding a company is not always a linear path, and our speakers share their personal journey as a founder. On November 22nd, we'll have another founder story with Raj Goyal. Raj is a very interesting speaker for many reasons, not the least of which being that he also at some point ran for US Congress as a Democrat in Kansas. But he's also going to talk about his legal technology startup, Bodala, and his journey as a founder. I've heard him tell part of this story at this year's summer program, Legal Technology and Operations on our campus, and I can assure you it is one to listen to. And with that session, let me pass the baton on to Gerald, who will talk about the sessions from November 23rd onwards.
I think on November 23rd, we have a slight chance of computational law. This is the session that I think we will have, I think of as a session involving when a computer scientist and a law professor walk into a bar. Now, my colleague Ming, who is one of the PI at the Center for Computational Law on its research project on the domain-specific language, is a computer scientist by training, by background, in startups for many years. And he has a really interesting story involving lawsuits and a little bit of family drama on how he came to understand that the law could be something he could apply his computer science skills to. And he will be met on stage by Professor Oliver Goodenough from Vermont Law School, and also a fellow at the research-related faculty at the Stanford Center, Codex Center, which we probably all know. So when a computer scientist and a law professor walk into a bar together, what will they come up with? One possible thing they will be talking about, and they do talk about this quite a lot, is the idea of computational law and computational contracts specifically. Now, what exactly is computational law? Now, there are many ways to understand the topic, and also many ways to misunderstand the topic. And if you don't really know what it is, this is the session to watch, because it will be delivered by two really, really experienced people who have been working in this space for years. And I do mean years, even though this topic seems relatively new. It is, in fact, far from new. It starts all the way back from an influential ICAO paper from Mike Janasirev. Even before that, people were thinking of building systems to represent and reason with legal rules to a limited extent. And I do expect that in this session, there will be some sneak peeks of software being developed. When did you last see a real computational contract? You know, people talk about smart contracts, including those on and off the blockchain. Have you ever seen one in the wild? Well, you may get to see a rare species of that on the 23rd November session. And in particular, I think they might talk a little bit about the insurance initiative, which the Stanford Codex has been working with us, the Center for Computational Law at SMU, on. So that's something to look forward to. Now, quickly moving on to the next slide, on November 24th, we have a session on law firm innovation, which I can guarantee you, it's not an oxymoron. Law firm innovation actually exists and it actually happens. Just probably not in the way we think it does. So for this session, we have two really heavyweight speakers coming in. Just to start, on April, she's currently head of R&D, global R&D at Clifford Chance, and she's been involved in some of the largest innovation departments around, in particular, some of the leading law firms, and is probably one of the most qualified persons there is out there, and also in Europe in particular, to speak on this topic. Now, Rajesh is a senior partner at Raja & Tan Asia, which is one of the largest Singapore law firms, and they also have a strong Southeast Asian regional presence. He has been involved in legal tech in Singapore since the very early days. Don't want to say that much because, you know, it might betray a little bit of his age, but ever since there were the first versions of the what we call LawNet in Singapore, which is the equivalent of Westlaw that we use for Singapore cases, people like him have been involved, and we will see some other speakers who have been very, very influential in the Singapore legal tech and innovation scene. Now, this particular senior partner is also one of the founding members of a firm known as Raja & Tan Technologies, which is the technology venture arm of Raja & Tan Asia. And I'm looking forward to the session to hear more about all the amazing and exciting stuff that they've been up to. under his leadership. And I hear that he may invite a special guest for his presentation, so that's something to look forward to. And quick note, of course, that this session is also unique because we are talking a little bit more about legal tech innovation in Europe and in Asia, which is a slight departure from the typical, US-centric programming that we tend to get. And next up, we have this session, broadly speaking, called Legal Growth Hacking. It will be presented by Alex Su of Ironclad. You don't need me to introduce this speaker. I don't think I really need to say anything, so I will not. I mean, if you don't know Alex Su by now, you are leaving a lot of potential life happiness on the table. So just Google his name. Don't just Google it, search it on LinkedIn, search it on TikTok in particular, and enjoy, but not now, because I think you will get hooked. Now, of course, Alex Su is a widely followed legal influencer, and I think he probably pioneered and invented the concept of what is a legal influencer. We've asked Alex to share his personal journey and learnings in this session, and I'm very much looking forward to this. I'm not sure even how he'll present this, but it might be an entire list of TikTok videos. It might be a few memes. And speaking of memes, since we're on this topic, I couldn't resist making one myself to encapsulate how excited we all are for his talk. And this is exactly how I feel. And moving on to November 30th, we have the Legal Tech Asia report. And this will be delivered by 3 speakers from around Asia. One, Brian from Hong Kong, Joanne, who's currently based in Singapore, but who has worked in many jurisdictions in the region, as well as Mr. Karthik Mahalingam, based in currently Dubai, but who has worked in was an equity partner, in fact, at one of the largest law firms in India. Now, Brian, going back to Brian, his legal innovation and technology, the Light Lab, as they call it at Hong Kong University, is one of the kind of key innovators in the space. And previously, he had worked for many years in capital markets, so he does have both the industry and the academic view at the same time. Speaking of Joanne, previously General Counsel at Unilever, Malaysia, and transitioned then into a head legal transformation role at Unilever in Australia. And after 3 years as one of the founding members of SYKE, SYKE, which is a legal tech consultancy and growing rapidly, as I understand it, now has taken up the head role at Clifford Chance's Create +65 lab. It's called +65 because it is Singapore's phone number. If you want to call a Singapore number, you have to add a +65 to it. It is based in Singapore. We are glad to have them. And this is going to be a session to look out for. So in particular, what they'll cover in that session is some updates from the ground in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and in India, and probably not just that, but also the entire region. There's more happening than you think. Again, we tend to get most of the programming that we tend to get comes from a more Western-centric perspective. But if you look at, partly because of the language barrier too, but if you look at what's happening here, you'd be surprised. And when we looked at it in the past few years, I myself was surprised. We did 2 reports on this. Just going to show you now, in 2020 and 2019, on the state of legal innovation in Asia Pacific. And Brian, as well as Karthik, in fact, contributed very, very interesting and rigorous chapters to both of these reports, which is why I'm excited to hear them speak again for updates on what has happened since then. As we all know, between 2022 and 2020, about 20 years passed. There was a pandemic, and a lot of things today are not as they used to be. So I'm looking forward to that update. Moving on then, we have on December 1st, a session focusing more on the law of tech slightly, but it is the law of tech that is meant to be used in law. So it's the law of legal tech. In particular, the one question that I myself have after looking at recent developments such as the AI Act, Digital Markets Act, etc., will legal tech become illegal tech, in the sense that are some of the practices going to be listed as high-risk AI practices under the AI Act? Will there be lots of regulation around this? Can I continue to run data analytics on judges, on legal academics without applying for special permits, even as an academic? These are questions, and I hope they'll be answered sooner rather than later. So in this session, you will hear from two very qualified speakers on the regulatory landscape around legal technology. One, Mr. Yong is the Deputy Commissioner for the Personal Data Protection Commission in Singapore. He's also a key official in the Infocom and Media Development Authority of Singapore, which oversees everything to do with the law of technology, more or less, in Singapore, other than the Ministry of Law, of course. And he also happens to be a legal tech pioneer, one of the leading drivers of the early technology projects in Singapore. Also, one of the masterminds behind Singapore's apparently award-winning model AI governance framework. So a uniquely qualified individual to comment on whether legal tech will become illegal. This will be followed by a deep dive into the AI Act in particular, by a very distinguished law professor who specialized in AI law from, I think, even before it was called AI law. This is Martin Ebers, president of the Rails, which is the AI and Law Society, and based in Europe. And one question that I would have, as I think many people in the audience might also have, is whether the upcoming draft AI Act would be, and laws like it, would be something like the next GDPR. As we know, the GDPR has more or less created its own industry of lawyers, partly indirectly from creating many other comparable pieces of legislation around the world. And today we have a whole ecosystem of privacy lawyers. Will we, in 10 years' time, have a whole ecosystem of AI lawyers who are advising solely on whether or not systems fall within the ambit of the AI Act and laws like that? So that's the session to watch out for if you are in this area of practice. Okay, next up, this is on December 7th, and I just want to be clear, this is December 7th because I'm introducing this session, and there will be another session on December 6th on legal science, which later on Dan will explain. This session will be about digital justice, partly something that Larry has already shared about, but also we are going to get an actual official from the Supreme Court of Singapore. His formal title is CTIO, Chief Technology and Innovation Officer in the Supreme Court, right? And my question, not showing off in any way, does your Supreme Court have a CTIO? What does a CTIO do? Well, ask him on December 7th. Does it actually need one? Another question to ask. And the broader question is, what is online justice? And this is something that Mr. Tan Ken Hui is going to be uniquely positioned to answer for us, because he has not only worked as the Chief Tech and Innovation Officer of the Supreme Court, he's also been a Chief Prosecutor for many years in the Singapore Attorney General's chambers, is deeply connected in the actual practice of law. And while he was doing all that stuff, he was also very deeply embedded in the legal tech ecosystem. And in fact, if you look up his name and you search it in the Australian Legal Information Institute, you will actually find an article published by him, written in 2002, about the development of legal technology in Singapore. That's 20 years ago, right? Shudder to imagine where I was 20 years ago, but this is a session you want to watch. And in particular, there will be a possible, we don't know for sure or not whether this will happen, but a possible cameo appearance from another Supreme Court official to give one view of how digital justice works. And with that, I'm going to pass you back to Dan, who will introduce the rest of the sessions and also close out.
Well, thank you very much, Gerald and Larry, for the overview of the session. So as we come to the finish line, Gerald just covered the session that'll be on December 7th. I'm going to jump back to December 6th. We wanted to have a kind of an overview more on the scientific side. I mean, there's been a good development, in my view, across law schools is that we're seeing increasing interest in kind of these legal data science laboratories, We wanted to highlight 3 of them. There are others. Some of the labs are not as focused, let's say, on the technical side of these things. Some are more focused in kind of other dimensions of the kind of innovation space. So we wanted to highlight 3 of them, 3 among, you know, a broader set. So in order to do that, we're calling this the Science Slam, but the idea is we wanted to have each lab group, Pier Paolo Vivo from King's College, who runs a kind of physics of law group at King's College in London, Corinna Coupet, who works with us at the Bucerius Center for Legal Technology and Data Science, but also holds a position at the Max Planck Institute for Informatics in Saarbrücken, Germany, and representing SMU, Haakon Lim will talk about some of the work that Gerald mentioned earlier, in that the SMU group has been working on. And so collectively, we want to sort of create a composite of sort of what's going on the scientific side. I mean, I will say that if you think about kind of the R&D, some of the R&D that ultimately might turn into might be commercialized and used and brought out as solutions, innovative solutions. You know, some of that starts in the laboratory space, and that's much more common if you look, you know, across the broader academic context, or the broader set of disciplines, is that the academy is the place where many of these ideas are kind of cultivated from an R&D perspective, and then they're ultimately brought out commercial as kind of for commercial utility. That doesn't mean everything we do has to have direct commercial utility, but you know, you don't want to be doing things that have no relevance in kind of, you know, in real life. So I think, you know, what we should see over this session is a pretty good cross section of some of the work that's actively going on, and so it should be a very exciting session on December 6th. Now to fast forward now to December 8th, which will be our final session. We will have Richard Susskind, who is, you know, obviously the most acclaimed speaker and thought leader in this area of kind of legal innovation, and has been on the beat for a very long time. His recent book, Online Courts and the Future of Justice, you know, incredibly, I mean, something he'd been working on, and it kind of will close out that theme of digital justice, but something he's been working on for a long time. But boy, did that ever get, because of the pandemic, the degree of interest in trying to do online tribunals. Obviously, the timing of the book was quite incredible. But he, again, as I mentioned, he's been, you know, working in this space for a very long time. I mean, probably his most well-known book is The End of Lawyers ? Which also happened to time up pretty well with, you know, really where this kind of modern version of legal innovation really kicks off, which is in the kind of aftermath of the global financial crisis. You know, that was the kind of catalyst for a lot of the wave of innovation that we saw over the past decade. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, you know, there are a lot of thought leaders in this space, but, you know, Richard has permanent technical credibility in my view, because, you know, he built the first expert system in law in the 1980s, focusing on a particular statute in the UK, the Latent Damage Act. And if you look online, you could find sort of you know, he often talks about trends in the industry and so forth, but he does really have the technical side of this you know, mastery of the technical side of this, again, going back to his university days, where they worked to build an expert system on this, again, a very long time ago, but the first one of its kind. And so we're very thankful that Richard has agreed to join us for this final session on December 8th to close out the Legal Tech Essentials 2022. So again, as noted, we're spanning the globe here. The time zone to maintain, this is the best window that exists to maintain it as good as we can, the time zones that we're trying to cover. And of course, we can't be perfect in every time zone. That's impossible for a 24-hour spanning the globe, but we try to pick a time that is at least reasonable for as many people as we could. So that kind of closes this out here. I want to mention once again, if you're interested in a more, this is an overview, but if you're interested in a more substantive version of this is the old 101 session that we did last year, but I think it still largely would hold up. If you want to go over there, that's available on YouTube. The link is here, and the link was put in the chat earlier. So if you're interested, you can watch this as a kind of, just to get moving at a bit of speed. That this will start you from 0 to a certain distance down the road. In the meantime, we can see over on Twitter, #Legal Tech Essentials. Also, I will mention that the LinkedIn group, we have a LinkedIn group for Legal Tech Essentials, has 3,600 people in it. And so the conversation continues over there as well. So we have both LinkedIn and Twitter available as a place where you can connect with with the folks that we have joining us from all over the world. But I think with that, that closes us out. So we'll see you again on Tuesday, November 15th for our first session. Our focus will be on digital justice and the BCG report that Dirk Hartung helped co-author. He'll highlight some of what's happening in the world of digital justice. So with that, I'm signing off from Chicago. I'll let Larry and Gerald sign off from their respective locations. Take care, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Okay. That was a great first session. See you on Tuesday. And I'm looking greatly forward to seeing you all again.
Good evening from Singapore, everyone. See you all.
All right. Bye, everyone.